Yo guys, what is up? Mike's in our last Epoch video, and today I just wanted to give you a quick update to my Warlock build that I've been using. I followed my guide that I posted yesterday to progress into Monoliths, and I was going to respec into Bleed, but I was just getting too many good items and synergies, and the necrotic damage, curse damage build was just working too well. So I want to showcase what I've been using because it's really good. I am now level 80. I'm an empowered monolith, clearing corruption level 100 fairly easily. We're basically unkillable, and I just kind of want to walk you through what I'm using. And I will also have a bleed warlock build guide tomorrow because I'm going to respec after recording this video and mess around with bleed, and then I'll have an opinion on which is better. But this is going to be for a curse necrotic damage over time chthonic fissure warlock. Let's get into it. So just a big general overview of the build. This is a chthonic fissure build. Chthonic fissure is the skill that casts spirits. When spirits hit enemies, they apply a damage over time that's a curse called Torment. Now, we are going to be scaling the Living Daylights out of Torment. And one of the ways to do that is with the node Twisted Waves. Torment deals more damage, multiplicative with other modifiers, per 2% uncapped necrotic resistance. So for every 2% necrotic resistance that I have, I'm getting 3% multiplicative increased damage, and currently I have 396 necrotic resistance. We are going to be able to get up into like 900% necrotic resistance once I'm fully geared, but that's kind of like one of the big things that we're doing. In addition to scaling up a ton of necrotic resistance, we're going to be using the Bone Clamor Barbute helmet. This is relatively easy helmet to get. I'll talk about like the specifics of our gear later, just this is the overview part, but this is also going to give us intelligence, armor, dexterity, necrotic resistance, and 1 ward per second per 3% uncapped necrotic resistance. So as you can see, I'm just chilling in town with 1,576 ward. In addition to that, we can grab the Twisted Heart of Ukhiros. This is going to give us 6% of our current health converted to ward when we directly cast a necrotic spell, and it's going to give us +1 to all of our necrotic spells and increased cast speed, as well as 17% increased health. So this is fantastic. We've got tons of ward generation from these 2 items alone. There are other ward generation items that I don't have, but this is kind of like a general overview of a lot of ward that we're going to be getting. And then when we get into our skill tree as well, we've got Ward of Malevolence. We gain additional ward decay threshold, and I gain ward on kill, and I also gain ward per 2 points of intelligence while channeling a skill. We're going to be channeling Profane Bloom, when we're also getting ward decay threshold per 1% necrotic resistance with this, which means that we're going to have a lot of shield all the time on this build. It's very rare that enemies get to your health. However, if they do get to your health, we also have 6 points into Spirit Leech, so we're getting tons of health back all the time from all of our damage over time. And that's kind of covering a bit of the survivability of the build. Now let's get into more of the skill specifics and how we're able to deal so much damage. So starting off left to right, we're using Wandering Spirits. This is a necrotic damage over time skill, and this necrotic damage over time skill, we're going to make poison enemies. These things have a 30% chance to cast for us Spectral Putrescence, which gives them a 100% poison chance, and these guys are going to deal 36% multiplicative increased damage to poisoned enemies. On top of that, we're also going to be grabbing Lingering Souls so that they last longer, and Reap the Damned so they get 120% increased damage to cursed enemies and damned enemies. Chthonic Fissure will be tormenting, which is a curse, and it'll be damning them. So anytime that you have both of these out, we're going to get 120% increased damage. We're also going to be grabbing Familiar Souls. This makes their reveal range smaller, which means that they're more tightly packed for damage over time on single targets. This is great for bossing. We're also going to be grabbing Drained Well. This gives them necrotic damage shred, which is fantastic, and Terrifying Presence, so that every time that these guys are out, enemies are going to be constantly getting feared, which gives them gives us some CC, which is very nice. Next up, we're grabbing Chthonic Fissure. This is the main damage skill of the build. We're going to be grabbing, let me move my camera over here. And ideally, we can get some more points in Chthonic Fissure because I would like to grab Acid Skin. It's just not a priority at this very moment. But with Chthonic Fissure, the big priorities are coming down to Damned Waters, Every time we have a spirit hit an enemy, it's going to apply 3 damned stacks, this is a necrotic damage over time. We've got Torment, dealing more damage per necrotic res. We've also got Grimtide, Chthonic Fissure, and Ailments and Inflicts. So Damned and Torment will get 1% increased necrotic damage per 1% added crit multiplier, and I'll show you how we're getting that in our passive tree. We'll also be grabbing Severed Ward so that we shred even more necrotic resistance. We're grabbing Stygian Current so that these spirits fly out more often, and we're grabbing Tome Gorger so that these Torment deals 45% increased damage to poisoned enemies, which we have our Wandering Spirits, 100% poisoning things. We also grab Eradication for 48% increased damage to curse enemies with Chthonic Fissure. And if you have the mana sustain for it of Gloom of Flames, is fantastic. However, it just causes mana issues, making Chthonic Fissures cost about like 70 plus mana. So I plan on speccing this later, but I messed around with it. I liked it. I just was constantly out of mana, and sometimes I was having deaths because I couldn't cast my skills. So I've decided not to use that right now. Next up, Spirit Plague. This is kind of, in terms of how this build plays out, you're going to be constantly dashing around. You're going to put down your Chthonic Fissure, do a few Spirit Plagues, and then dash around, put down your Fissure, move, and then just constantly doing that. And then every once in a while, if you're going to pack, you're going to Profane Bloom. We'll talk about that in a second. So Spirit Plague is another curse skill, and every time we click it, we're going to get 15% increased global damage over time, stacking up to 13 stacks. And when this spreads to enemies, it will auto stack this for you. So even if you only click it once, if you kill an enemy with it on, it'll spread to 4 more enemies, and then it's stacking up for you. So you don't actually need to click this 13 times to get the full benefit of it. So this is a ton of global damage over time for us. It's also going to inflict Plague, which is more guaranteed poison. Once again, we deal more damage to poisoned enemies. We're grabbing Rotten to the Core, so it does 50% more damage and another 50% more damage with Concentrated Rot. We're also going to make it more mana efficient, last longer. Perpetuity gives us increased cast speed. Toxic Transmissions gives us more stacks of poisoned, and Plague Burst allows it to spread whenever we hit an enemy that's afflicted by it. And so when it's spreading, which is it's going to be free stacking the Pestilence. Once again, I would like to spend a little bit more points here to get more points into Plague Burst, but that's what it is at the moment. And really important to grab Plague of Eyes. This gives us +1 spell necrotic damage per 1 intelligence. I'm currently sitting at 66 intelligence, so that's 66 flat damage for our Spirit Plague. This is a big damage skill for us. Next up, I'm using Transplant. I was originally going to use Bone Curse as my other spec skill, but I really like Transplant. There is a new unique that's going to be really good that I don't have yet that's specific for Soul Feast on the Warlock. We'll talk about that when we get into more of our gear specifics. But when we don't have that, I really like Transplant. Now, one of the reasons Transplant's so good is because whenever we cast it, we get haste for 3 seconds. The way that I've set up this build, real quick, watch when I teleport here. Here's haste, and it's on me, and it's gone, and then I have haste up again. So this haste, this 30% increased movement speed, and the 20% increased cast speed is basically up 100% of the time. That is a massive buff for us. In addition to that, whenever we transplant into a group, we're going to cast Bone Curse, which is another curse on enemies. We're going to make it have a kill threshold, so you can see percentages health on bosses. Anytime you get a boss or an elite down to 15%, you just dash into them. It'll insta-kill them. And it's also going to give us bone armor with a less damage taken multiplier, and we can make it more effective and last longer. This also gets 100% uptime, basically, while we're teleporting around. We're also going to give us more cooldown and cast speed for Transplant. This is quite a bit of survivability for us and another source of curses. And then lastly, we've got Profane Veil. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this skill, and I freaking love it. It's so good. First off, Profane Veil will be double casting curses for us. It's going to cast Penitent Tangent, which is a fire curse for us. It's also going to be casting Bone Curse on enemies. And we are also going to be getting Scorn. Scorn is the key to this skill. You deal more global damage to cursed enemies in Profane Veil. This is a 50% all damage multiplier for us. So basically what you want to do with this build is you're putting down you're basically casting all of your skills. Put down your damage, cast your Spirit Plague, make sure your Wandering Spirits are going, transplant to cast the Bone Curse, and then while all of that is happening, after you click all of your skills, you just hold down Profane Veil, and you'll watch your damage shoot up by 50%. It's fantastic. And then anytime we're casting a curse, we're going to get cooldown reduction for Profane Veil so that we can keep it up more often. I'm actually going to remove a point there. I was messing around with that, but you're going to want 2 points here so that you can keep up Profane Veil basically all the time. Profane Veil, you're basically immune to damage while you're in it. You can still take dot damage, but you're dodging all hits, so it's great for bossing, it's great for survivability, and it's a great damage tool. In addition to that, we're grabbing Seance, so whenever a Wandering Spirit is revealed inside Profane's Veil area, the spirit deals more damage in a larger area for the rest of the spirit's duration. So while this skill is going, if we Profane Veil, all of a sudden these spirits get 75% increased damage and area, so it's fantastic for juicing those guys up. And then we're also grabbing over here so that it creates secondary areas, casts our Bone Curse for us. And that is kind of the setup with Profane Veil. For our skill points, we're putting 2 points into Blood Aura for increased damage, 8 points into Forbidden Knowledge for more intelligence and necrotic resistance, 1 point into Mana of Mortality. Whenever a nearby enemy minion dies, we have a 10% chance to gain some ward, but we're really here just so that we can grab 40% increased ward retention, necrotic resistance, and poison. Remember that necrotic resistance is a straight up damage multiplier for us. We're also grabbing vitality. Vitality is going to give us a little bit more survivability, and every point of vitality gives us another 1% poison and necrotic resistance. So really nice there. Next up, we're going into our Warlock tree. We're grabbing 5 points into Soul Stealer. If you're having issues with mana and you're not spec'd into this, I recommend doing it. It'll give you tons of mana sustain. Unholy Torment must have. Flat damage for curses is one of the best ways to scale our curse damage. We've got Occultist Mind for more intelligence and more mana. We've got Ward of Malevolence for more ward on kill, but really here for the ward decay threshold per 1% necrotic resistance. Spirit Leech, ton of healing for us. Harrowing Armor for more armor and health, but we're mainly here to get the more armor per curse on targets. So we're getting tons of curses on targets. And then Dark Protections gives us less damage taken per curse on target. We are inflicting tons of curses. So this is a lot of survivability for us. Next up, absolutely fill out Withering. This is going to give you a 100% chance whenever you hit an enemy to apply Withering to them, which makes enemies take 10% increased damage from curses. And we're going to be stacking this up to 200% increased damage with our curses. Plus the 5-point bonus gives us less damage taken from withered enemies. So we're stacking up less damage taken from curses, less damage taken from withered. We're going to grab Malefic Body for 10 points into intelligence, 10 points into vitality. Intelligence is a great way to scale our damage. Vitality also gives us health and necrotic resistance, so it's kind of a double whammy there. Next up, we're going to grab Chaotic Strikes for the chance to deal double damage and increase damage per curse on enemies. But we're really here for the 40% critical multiplier, which I know sounds weird because we're not critting with this build. However, that crit multiplier, if we look back at our Chthonic Fissures, that's going to give us 40% increased multiplicative necrotic damage with all of our ailments from Chthonic Fissures. So that is an absolute must-have, 5 out of 5 points. And then we put 5 points into Fleeting Crone. Whenever you have a chance to gain haste for 2 seconds when you kill a cursed enemy or hit a cursed boss. This is going to give us even more movement speed, 100% uptime, but it also gives us 50% increased effective haste. So then we're getting 45% increased movement speed from it, which is fantastic. And then Encroaching Darkness, you're just putting 2 points here so that you can get plus 18 spell damage for curses, and we're triggering Anguish on bosses. Anguish is another curse, so we're stacking another curse from this that is going to make enemies deal necrotic damage to all the enemies around them. And now we get into our gear. So for our gear, I already said that I'm using the Bone Clamor Barbute helmet. This is fantastic. If you don't have something like this, I would recommend looking for possibly a helmet like this. I haven't re-rolled this yet, but if I wasn't using this, I'd be using something like this with plus 55% necrotic resistance, plus to Spirit Plague with increased damage. You could roll Intelligence on this, increased health, or other resistances that you're missing. But this is kind of the best in slot amulet for us, or helmet. It's going to give us a ton of survivability. For your amulet, you're really looking for the Bone Amulet base. This is going to give you physical resistance and necrotic resistance. Mine's pretty crappy, but I do have damage over time, elemental resistance, and fire resistance. If you can double roll necrotic resistance on this, this is a ton of extra damage. And then you're looking for like crit multipliers, pretty nice spot to get on your amulet, or more intelligence, necrotic damage over time, all good things. On your body armor, you are ideally looking for the roll. I had a body armor. It was too high level for me at the moment. That gives you +1 to Chthonic Fissures. I don't have that, but I've got +1 to Wandering Spirits with increased spell damage, and then the shared necrotic damage, so even more necrotic damage. I rolled Hybrid Health onto mine. This also has a good armor and all resistance. You're just looking for the plus to skills and more damage on your chest piece and survivability. For my weapon, you can use a staff if you get a really good staff. I got a really good wand that I liked a lot that has spell necrotic damage, increased curse damage, reduced spell mana cost, increased necrotic damage, and crit multiplier. These are all fantastic. Increased necrotic damage, increased dot, and crit multiplier are the best possible things that you can use on your weapon. Currently, I'm actually using a weapon called Marina's Lost Soul, which is really cool on this build. Just kind of random drop for me, and it fits in perfectly. This gives me more spell necrotic damage, increased curse damage, plus spell necrotic damage, increased spell damage, increased cast speed, 20% increased necrotic penetration with possesses per stack of damned, and you are damned whenever we cast a spell. So every time that I cast a spell with this thing on, as you can see, I'm stacking up damned, and that's actually going to give me global necrotic damage, or necrotic penetration for all of my curses and stuff. You'll see that like when I do that and I'm not hitting enemies, it is going to lower my health because I'm stacking damned on myself. However, because we have so much leech on this build, my health just shoots right back up. So this is giving me a ton of extra damage, and I'm using this right now. But if you don't have something like that, just use like a necrotic damage or a crit multiplier wand or staff, and you should be fine. Because I've got a wand on, I've also got this catalyst, which is giving me intelligence, spell crit chance, more spell crit chance. Don't care about the spell crit chance. Once again, you're looking for like crit multiplier, necrotic damage, or damage over time multiplier. Necrotic penetration's fantastic. And then I got even more necrotic resistance on this thing as well. For my rings, got some elemental resist, necrotic resist, intelligence, necrotic or physical resist, physical damage. Once again, pretty crap gear here. But you're looking for flat rolls of intelligence, necrotic resistance, any resistances that you need. And the best ring that you can find is this base, the plus 40% necrotic resistance rings. These will allow you to stack up even more necrotic resistance. Once again, our survivability and our damage is based off of that stat, so definitely look for it. I've just got a health belt on, 19% increased health. I'm trying to get as survivable as possible for the hardest content that we're running. On my gloves, these gloves are called Atrophy. They give you timer out duration, chance to chill, or chance to slow duration, chance to slow. But mainly they give plus 20% penetration against all resistances for damage over times. If you don't have something like the Marina's Lost Soul to give you necrotic pen, getting 20% pen for all your dots is really fantastic. Once again, for some more survivability, I'm running some gloves with armor, mana regen, intelligence, necrotic resistance, armor, and cast speed. All great things there. For my boots, I've got the Advent of the Erased on. These are giving me 29% increased cooldown recovery speed. This is one of the most important stats for this build because a lot of your survivability is based off of being able to upkeep Transplant and Profane Veil. And we're going to get a lot more damage from Wandering Spirits, having a lower cooldown. So cooldown is one of the most important stats on your boots, and movement speed and hybrid health if you can get it as well. But this also gives me a chance to gain haste whenever a nearby enemy dies. This keeps me super speedy on the build. And whenever I gain haste, I get 16 ward. And every time that we're basically dashing with Transplant, we're getting ward. When we're killing enemies, we're getting, we're getting haste, so we get ward. So that's a really nice interaction. And then lastly, I've got the Twisted Heart of Kyros. This thing's really nice for just more ward generation for you. You're constantly getting ward whenever you use a necrotic skill. As you can see, I can just click this and stack up a lot of ward, and then all of the damage that's doing is just going to zip me back up to full health with all of the leech that we've got. For our idols, 9% increased health with minion cooldown recovery speed, mainly here for the health. Flat damage for curses on both of these. These are really nice. I grabbed this with chance to poison and necrotic resistance, really good. Increased duration for Profane Veil and Poison Chance while at low health, and then armor granted by Bone Armor. You're really looking, if you can get it, for necrotic resistance on your idols, and then flat damage for curses is also fantastic. I just wanted to show you guys what I'm rocking. If you're looking to farm these pieces of gear for the Bone Clamor Armor, you're going to want to farm the Black Sun Monolith. Look for the helmet rewards and the unique rewards. I also got a lot of my gear just from Prophecies, which is like the new feature of this season. You can go do challenges, and as you can see, this is Prophecy gear. I went and did a challenge that gave me 4 unique helmets, and I just got lucky enough to get this as one of the 4 unique helmets. But that's one of the best ways to get these uniques right now. And for this build will be, by the way, the Wheels of Torment. I'm trying to farm for this thing right now. This is going to give us potentially 3 levels of all of our spell skills. Intelligence, whenever we cast Soul Feast, we curse ourselves and a nearby enemy. Per 10 intelligence with Torment. We're going to gain haste when we cast Soul Feast. Increased effective haste on us. Necrotic penetration with Torment is the big one. Up to 90% pen with Torment. And a chance to cast Chthonic Fissure whenever we hit a boss or a rare enemy with Soul Feast and we don't have an active Fissure. This thing is going to be insane. I don't have it yet, but this thing is doing just fine for me. If you want to farm for Marina's Lost Soul, I've been farming from it, or got this from the Stolen Lance, which has the chance to drop caster weapons. So that's where I got that. The Twisted Heart of Kyros drops, basically not guaranteed, but it drops from the final boss in the Reign of Dragons. I got it my first try. Can't use it till you're level 80. But once you get this thing, very, very fantastic for this build. It's one of the best in slot things that we can be using right now, just for survivability and +1 to all of our skills, as well as cast speed and that 17% increased health. Your damage rotation on this build, when you're going through like monoliths and just like ad clearing, you're basically just putting down a Chthonic Fissure, tapping your Spirit Plague, and then dashing. Put down a Chthonic Fissure, tap your Spirit Plague, and then you're using Wandering Spirits, have a cooldown, and if you need any more extra damage, you can Profane Veil. But that's really like all you're doing while you're clearing monoliths. For actual bossing, it's a little bit more imperative that you click Spirit Plague a bunch as it builds up that total global damage over time at 13 stacks. So we're going to put down our Chthonic Fissures, tap a bunch of Spirit Plagues, build it up a ton, and then Chthonic Fissure again, Wandering Spirits, dash in, and then hold down our Profane Veil for that big damage. And then when you come out of it, your cooldown should basically be reset. Go back into it again. Now that we've shredded some necrotic resistance, there's like 150,000 dot tick right there. And obviously, if you continue to do this on bosses for those extended fights, you'll get up into the 200,000 dot damage range, which is really, really great. Gonna do it for the video, guys. I apologize if my eyes look pretty like tired or red. I've been streaming all day and I'm ready to go to sleep, but I wanted to record this kind of like day 1 progression update for you guys. And I will catch y'all tomorrow. Take care. Peace.